There is a divine intelligence that governs the rhythm of your life. You thought your prayers went unheard. No, they were stored. They were recorded. And now, the answer is coming, but not the way you imagined. Not in the shape you expected. It will be bigger, much bigger, because delay is not denial, and preparation is not punishment. You are being set up for overflow. Heaven is not ignoring you. It's arranging you. Heaven is not ignoring you. It's arranging you. And that's a truth most people never grasp until they look back and see the pattern, the strategy, the chessboard of their life. You thought silence meant abandonment, but silence was actually construction. When a building is going up, it doesn't make noise until the foundation is being poured. The workers don't shout about the blueprints. They just follow them. The architect doesn't need your validation to build the vision. And your life, yes, your life has been under construction, not under judgment. You prayed, you cried, you fasted, and then nothing, no response, no breakthrough, just silence. And that silence almost made you quit. You started thinking maybe you weren't worthy, maybe you were forgotten. But let me ask you this, have you ever ordered something online and the tracking says processing? That doesn't mean it's not coming. It means it's in motion, but not yet in your hands. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. Just because it's not loud doesn't mean it's not real. Heaven works behind curtains. Destiny is sown in silence. Sometimes the delay isn't even about you. It's about the room you're supposed to enter. That room wasn't ready. That opportunity hadn't matured yet. That person who was going to connect you to your next level, they were still developing their own integrity. Had you shown up too early, you would have walked into a battlefield unarmed, a room without alignment, a stage without lighting. So heaven said, wait, I'm not ignoring you. I'm arranging things for your arrival. Take a look at your life. How many times did you want something so badly, but it didn't happen? That job you thought would change your life, closed door. That person you thought you would marry, walked away. That business deal you were sure would skyrocket, collapsed. And back then, it felt like punishment. You were angry. You questioned everything. But now, years later, you see that what looked like rejection was actually redirection. You dodged bullets dressed as blessings. Heaven was not silent. It was strategic. Think about it. A farmer never digs up a seed just because it didn't sprout in a week. The seed is not ignored. It's in the ground, being surrounded, being nourished. There's pressure in that soil. There's resistance. There's darkness. But under all that, growth. And when the time is right, that seed doesn't whisper its presence. It breaks the ground open. That's what's happening in your life. You are being aligned for an emergence, not forgotten in a grave. You ever seen traffic lights at 2 a.m. with no cars in sight? And you're just sitting there, waiting for it to turn green. You're thinking, this is unnecessary. There's no one here. Why am I waiting? But the system doesn't change just because your eyes can't see the traffic. There's a rhythm. There's a flow. If you move on red, you might not survive what's coming from a direction you didn't expect. You might think you're ready. But heaven knows the traffic patterns of your destiny. Timing is everything. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. Sometimes the most powerful answers come in the form of delays. Sometimes what you think is a no is just a not yet. You want it fast. Heaven wanted right. You asked for a door. Heaven said, hold on, we're building a hallway. You asked for a breakthrough. Heaven said, first we break the version of you that can't carry the next level. Have you ever lost your phone signal just before an important message came through? And then you step into a better zone and boom, all the messages flood in at once. That's what's happening to some of you right now. You're stepping into a new zone. You're getting into alignment. The silence is about to break, but it's not because heaven changed its mind. It's because your position has finally caught up to your purpose. And here's the wild part. While you were questioning, doubting, even weeping heaven was watching. Not in disappointment, but in design. Watching you grow resilience. Watching you outgrow your desperation. Watching you evolve into someone who can handle not just the gift, but the weight of the gift. You wanted the blessing. Heaven wanted to make sure you didn't destroy it once you received it. Some people get what they ask for and collapse under it. You ever see someone win the lottery and lose everything within a year? That's because elevation without preparation is self-sabotage. You were not being ignored. You were being shaped, carved, and crafted into the kind of person who doesn't just receive, but multiplies. You're not being delayed. You're being developed. And when the moment finally arrives, you won't have to force it, beg for it, or chase it. It'll fit. It'll flow. Because heaven doesn't forget. It just finishes what it starts before it delivers. So next time you feel like nothing's happening, remind yourself quiet doesn't mean empty. Stillness doesn't mean stagnant. Silence doesn't mean forgotten. It means something sacred is being arranged, and your name is on it. The delay was building capacity. The delay was building capacity. And that's the part most people struggle to understand. You asked for something big, but you weren't big enough to hold it yet. Not in size, but in strength. Not in talent, but in depth. You were asking for more, but carrying less. You were praying for overflow, but your vessel still had leaks. See, asking for rain is one thing, but do you have a roof that can handle the storm when it shows up? People want greatness, but they don't want growth. They want the spotlight, but they don't want the sharpening. You said,
I'm ready.
But if the answer had arrived when you first prayed, it might have crushed you. You think you were waiting for the blessing. What if the blessing was waiting for you? There's a reason they don't hand out PhDs to kindergartners. It's not that the dream isn't real. It's that the dream requires development. And development takes time. That time between your ask and your answer isn't punishment. It's preparation. Because heaven doesn't give based on what you want. It gives based on what you can handle. Think about this. Have you ever tried to carry groceries in a single trip, overloading your arms just because you didn't want to walk twice? And then halfway through, bags start ripping, things fall, and you're struggling to hold on to what you thought you could carry. That's what some people try to do with life. They pray for the whole package. Success, influence, relationships, peace, wealth. But they haven't built the arms to carry that kind of load. So heaven says, no, we're going to the gym first. We're going to build your strength before we deliver the weight. You were being built in secret. Your soul was in training. Your character was in rehab. You had to unlearn some things, relearn better things, and stretch yourself in areas where you were too small, minded, too emotionally reactive, too insecure to handle what was next. And that stretching, it felt like struggle. It felt like pain. But pain wasn't your enemy. Pain was your personal trainer. You asked to lead a team. Heaven said, first, let's teach you how to manage your emotions. You asked for global impact. Heaven said, let's test your integrity when no one is watching. You asked for financial freedom. Heaven said, let's build your discipline in seasons of lack. See, the level of your request determines the weight of your preparation. You weren't being denied. You were in training camp. You were in a sacred boot camp for destiny. Capacity is not just about having space. It's about being prepared for pressure. Everybody wants the platform, but few want the pressure that comes with it. More eyes means more critics. More money means more decisions. More influence means more responsibility. And if you don't have the internal infrastructure to hold that pressure, it will break you before it blesses you. Have you ever watched someone get famous too fast? One viral video, one overnight success, and suddenly they're everywhere. But then a few months later, they disappear. Why? Because their exposure exceeded their capacity. They were seen before they were solid, celebrated before they were stable. And they couldn't survive the pressure that came with the platform. That's why the delay in your life wasn't a curse. It was a cushion. You were being solidified so that when the door opens, you stay open. Think of a balloon. Fill it too fast, it pops. But if you stretch it slowly, build its shape, it can hold more without breaking. That's what was happening to you. You were being stretched so that when expansion comes, you don't explode, you expand with grace, you handle it, you carry it, you multiply it. Sometimes we think we're ready because we're passionate. But passion without capacity is like fire without wood. It burns fast and dies faster. Heaven was building your wood, building your endurance, building your roots before giving you fruit. Because fruit without roots is short-lived. You were being rooted, even when it felt like you were buried. Have you ever tried to lift something heavy and pull the muscle? That's what premature blessings do. If you haven't been trained, if your muscles, your emotional muscles, mental muscles, spiritual muscles aren't strong enough, the very thing you prayed for will become the very thing that injures you. So instead, you were put through reps. Repetitions of struggle, repetitions of faith, repetitions of standing even when it felt like nothing was moving. And that job that didn't come through, that relationship that ended, that opportunity that ghosted you, all of it training, all of it part of the process of expansion. Because you cannot carry what you haven't been conditioned for. And conditioning takes time. You can't microwave capacity. It must be built, not wished for. That's why you kept going through the same cycles. Not because you were cursed, but because heaven was trying to build muscle memory. Because when the door finally opens, you won't have time to prepare. You'll have to perform. You have to step into it immediately. So the delay, it was mercy. It was mentorship. It was mastery in the making. You thought too small, you thought too small. And that's not an insult. It's a revelation. The problem wasn't your ambition. It was your vision. You were dreaming based on what you've seen, what you've experienced, and what you've been told is realistic. But what if I told you that realistic is the enemy of revolutionary? That sometimes your imagination is handcuffed by your past. You've been limiting yourself to what's visible, when the greatest things in life are often born from what's invisible. You prayed for a door when heaven was planning a city. You asked for a table in the corner while your name was being engraved on a throne. You wanted to survive, but you were designed to reign. Survival was never the goal, dominion was. But you couldn't see that because you were measuring yourself by broken rulers. People who gave up on their dreams were telling you how to shape yours. People who never built anything were giving you advice on what was possible. You've been sitting at the edge of your own greatness, too scared to ask for more. Have you ever tried to pour water into a small cup and it starts spilling over? That's what your life was starting to look like. You were trying to fit a gallon-sized blessing into a shot. Glass vision. You didn't need more water. You needed a bigger cup. The overflow wasn't the problem. The container was. That's why your old plans started breaking down. That's why the things you used to be excited about suddenly felt too small, too tight, too shallow. Because when growth starts happening on the inside, small thinking becomes painful. It's like trying to wear shoes 2 sizes too small. At first you can squeeze in, convince yourself it's okay, tell yourself it'll stretch. But then the blisters form. The discomfort increases. Every step becomes a struggle. That's how you know it's time to upgrade. Your discomfort wasn't failure. It was feedback. Feedback that your purpose had outgrown your plans. You wanted a job, but you were being prepared to build an empire. You were praying for a promotion, but heaven was preparing you for ownership. You were asking for rent money, but the earth was being told to make room for your name on the deed. and you couldn't see it because you thought the delay meant denial. But the truth is, small prayers don't scare heaven. It's your boldness that moves the atmosphere. It's your willingness to think beyond your surroundings, beyond your upbringing, beyond your current bank account that causes shifts to happen in the unseen. You thought too small because you were wounded. That betrayal made you lower your expectations. That divorce made you shrink your capacity to love. That bankruptcy made you afraid to take risks again. So you started asking for just enough. Just enough peace to survive. Just enough joy to make it through the day. Just enough money to pay the bills. But you weren't born for just enough. You were born to overflow. You were born to make such an impact that future generations carry your name in conversations about legacy and transformation. It's like standing in front of the ocean and only scooping up a bottle of water, then walking away saying, "That's all I need." Not realizing that the source was never the problem. Your faith was. The supply has always been unlimited. What limits you is how much you're willing to receive. The ceiling you keep bumping into, it's not glass. It's your thinking. It's your belief system. It's the voice in your head telling you not to get your hopes up. But your hopes are the soil in which greatness is planted. And if you don't raise your hopes, you'll keep harvesting small things. Think of a phone charger. If you use the wrong adapter, it won't power your device fast enough. It might not even connect. The device isn't broken. The outlet isn't weak. The problem is the connector. Some of you have been trying to connect big dreams to small expectations, and you wonder why nothing's charging. You've got to match the level of your dream with the level of your thinking. You've got to stretch beyond what's convenient and start asking for what aligns with your calling. You thought too small when you settled for peace instead of purpose. When you chose comfort over calling. When you surrounded yourself with people who clap for your potential, but secretly hope you never surpass them. You thought too small when you kept dimming your light so others wouldn't feel insecure. But the truth is, your light isn't just for you. It's for every person watching, wondering if it's possible to dream big after being broken. It's not arrogance to expect more. It's alignment. When a lion roars, it's not showing off. It's being what it was born to be. You weren't born to shrink. You were born to expand. Every time you catch a glimpse of a bigger version of your life, that's not fantasy. That's a preview. A divine leak of what's already written. But to step into it, you must let go of the small. Your dreams are trying to break out of your comfort zone. Your purpose is calling you out of that small apartment in your mind. That little box where you've packed your identity, labeled it average, and stacked it next to all the other dreams you never unpacked. But now is the time to stretch, to stop thinking in limits, to stop praying like you're trying not to disturb anyone, to stop asking for crumbs when you were born to own the table. Hidden battles were being fought for you. You have no idea how many battles were being fought for you when you thought nothing was happening. You were sleeping peacefully at night, but there were forces moving in realms. You couldn't see, clearing paths, shutting down traps, and canceling attacks that had your name written on them. You were crying over delays, but in the unseen, your name was being defended. Your destiny was being protected from sabotage you didn't even know was scheduled. You thought it was just a bad day. But something was trying to break you, and it failed. See, the mistake we often make is believing that the only action is the action we can see. But life is deeper than that. You don't see the roots of a tree, but that's where the real power is. You don't see the engine under the hood, but that's what makes the car move. And in your life, just because you didn't see anything change doesn't mean nothing changed. Sometimes silence is strategy. Sometimes the most dangerous part of a war is the part you didn't know you survived. Have you ever been driving and suddenly felt the need to take a different route. Just a small feeling. You didn't think much of it. Later, you find out there was a major accident or a dangerous situation on the road you almost took. That wasn't coincidence. That was intervention. A hidden battle just turned into a visible miracle. But because it looked small, you dismissed it. You didn't realize the magnitude of what you just escaped. You were about to say yes to someone who looked perfect, spoke well, knew how to charm a room, but their heart was poisoned. You almost signed a contract that looked like a breakthrough, but it would have locked you into bondage. You were about to partner with someone who praised your talent, but secretly resented your light. So heaven rerouted you. You thought it was rejection. You thought you were being ignored. But what you didn't know was they were a setup for sabotage. And the silence you experienced was actually security being established. Think of it like airport security. You don't see the background checks. You don't see the surveillance. You don't see the scans. But it's all happening before you board, before you take off, before you even reach the gate. That's how your life has been operating. Background checks on people you were about to trust. Surveillance on rooms you were about to walk into. Scans on deals that looked good, but hid danger. You weren't waiting. You were being watched over. And it goes even deeper. There are people who plan to break your confidence, dismantle your credibility, and tear down your influence. Some even smiled in your face while plotting behind your back. But their words couldn't stick. Their strategy couldn't win. Why? Because hidden battles were fought for you. Your reputation was covered. Your name was hidden in favor. Your future was sealed in protection. While you were questioning the process, heaven was busy preventing your downfall. You ever notice how some people just fade out of your life without warning? No explanation, no closure, just distance. You tried to reach out, tried to keep the bond, but it just dissolved. You thought it was loss, but it was protection. You didn't realize what they were saying about you behind your back. You didn't know they were silently competing with you. You didn't know they were rooting for your failure in secret. So, you lost the relationship, but you kept your peace. You lost the friend, but you kept your future. Because unseen battles were being won on your behalf. Sometimes you even battle yourself. Self-doubt, fear, anxiety. Those invisible wars that rage in the mind. And the fact that you're still standing, still breathing, still moving forward, that's not just resilience. That's reinforcement. Something greater was pushing back the weight that tried to suffocate you. You were drowning in thoughts of quitting, and somehow you found the strength to keep going. That strength didn't come from motivation. It came from protection. You were shielded from information that would have crushed your spirit, hidden from opportunities that would have destroyed your character, blocked from circles that would have poisoned your perspective. You don't even know how many times you almost lost your mind, how many times depression hovered but couldn't land, how many times anxiety screamed but couldn't paralyze you, because something unseen was shielding your sanity. There were nights you didn't know how you made it through. Days where you walked into work or class or that family gathering with a smile, but your soul was fractured. And somehow, some way, you made it. And here's the thing. You didn't make it because you're strong. You made it because hidden help was holding you up. You made it because there were hands you couldn't see carrying you over landmines that would have taken others out. You thought you lost time, but truthfully, you avoided disaster. You thought you missed your window, but in reality, you were rerouted around sabotage. You thought the no was punishment, but it was actually preservation. Every delay was a defense system. Every closed door was a fortress. Every detour was divine protection from warfare you weren't built to fight yet. And sometimes the proof of the battle is in the peace. The enemy tried to scatter your thoughts, but you're still clear. tried to steal your joy, but you're still laughing. Tried to cripple your progress, but somehow doors are still opening. There is no logical explanation because it's not logical. It's spiritual. You didn't see it, but heaven fought for you. You didn't feel it, but you were covered. You didn't hear the clash, but you were protected in silence. Hidden battles were fought and won because your destiny was too important to be left exposed. You had to be prepared for what you prayed for. You had to be prepared for what you prayed for. That's the part nobody wants to talk about. People love to scream, "It's my season." They love to post about destiny, overflow, and answered prayers. But they don't want to talk about the weight that comes with it. They don't want to discuss how you had to cry in silence while learning patience. How you had to battle yourself in private before you could lead anyone in public. You see, the bigger the prayer and the deeper the preparation. And if you prayed for something heavy, you better believe you were going to be trained to carry it. You don't give a child the keys to a luxury car, no matter how much they beg. Not because you don't love them, but because you do. You know they aren't ready for that kind of responsibility. You know they don't have the maturity to handle what comes with it. That's what preparation is. It's love. It's protection. It's wisdom in action. You asked for something big, something life-shifting. And the moment that request left your lips, the process of shaping began. You wanted the stage, so you were sent into seasons of silence. You wanted the blessing, so you had to be broken in private. Not because you weren't good enough, but because heaven knew the level you were asking for required stability. There are levels that cannot be accessed with shaky character, fragile identity, or unresolved trauma. So instead of rushing the answer, the Creator begins refining you. Because the worst thing that could happen isn't not getting what you prayed for. It's getting it too early. It's like trying to build a skyscraper on a foundation made for a cottage. You may see progress in the beginning. It might even look impressive to others. But the moment pressure hits, it crumbles. Because what was built didn't match what was beneath it. And too many people want the skyscraper without doing the digging. They want visibility without vulnerability. They want success without stewardship. But the process says, let's dig deeper. You had to be prepared emotionally. That's why certain people had to leave. You couldn't take that old pain into the new platform. You couldn't carry unforgiveness into the future you were being called to. You couldn't lead others while still bleeding from wounds you refused to heal. So things started leaving your life, not because you weren't loved, but because the baggage was too heavy for where you were going. You had to be prepared mentally. That's why you went through seasons of confusion and frustration. Your mind was being rewired. Your thinking was being upgraded. You had to learn how to see things differently. To stop reacting and start responding. To stop seeing setbacks as punishment and start viewing them as preparation. That shift in mindset, that didn't happen overnight. That was the grind behind the scenes. You thought you were being overlooked, but you were being developed. Have you ever cooked a meal in a pressure cooker? It doesn't look exciting. It doesn't make for a pretty picture. But inside, the ingredients are being transformed. The pressure is forcing flavors to deepen, meat to soften, and everything to blend. That's what was happening to you. You were in a pressure cooker. And yes, it felt intense. It felt like too much at times. But what came out was stronger, richer, and more powerful than what went in. You had to be prepared spiritually. That's why your faith was tested. Not in easy seasons, but in wilderness moments. When nothing made sense. When prayer seemed unanswered. When people betrayed you and you had to choose whether to break down or break through. That was your preparation. That was your moment of alignment. You were being trained to trust beyond what you could see. To believe when nothing was changing. To show up with excellence even when your life felt empty. That's not weakness. That's power under pressure. That's character in the making. You had to be prepared relationally. That's why you had to let go of people who were comfortable with your old self. You had to release those who only loved you when you were quiet, small, insecure, and doubting. Because when you grow, you make insecure people uncomfortable. When you rise, people who refuse to stretch will try to shrink you. But you can't build a destiny around people who are addicted to your dysfunction. So you had to walk alone. You had to learn how to validate yourself, how to encourage yourself, how to trust yourself again. You had to be prepared financially. That's why you went through tight seasons. Moments where the budget was tight, the bills stacked high, and you questioned whether you were failing. But you weren't failing. You were being trained in discipline, learning how to manage little so you could handle much. Because abundance isn't just about having more. It's about managing more. And if you can't steward 100, you won't sustain 1,000,000. You had to master consistency when no one was watching. Had to manage pressure with a smile. Had to stay humble in obscurity. Because the answer to your prayer wasn't just about a moment. It was about a lifestyle. And now you realize it. Every delay was not a denial. Every closed door was a classroom. Every heartbreak was a hammer shaping your foundation. Every not yet was heaven's way of saying, I love you too much to let you crash under the weight of your own request. So the process continued. Painful, yes. Isolating sometimes. But necessary, because what you prayed for wasn't small. It was significant. And significance always demands preparation. Some answers look like loss at first. Some answers look like loss at first. You prayed for peace, and then people started walking away from your life. You asked for clarity, and then everything got confusing. You cried out for direction, and all the doors you had planned to walk through started closing one by one. And in that moment, it didn't feel like an answer. It felt like punishment. It felt like betrayal. You looked around at the pieces of what used to be your comfort zone and your dream. And you whispered, is this really the answer? But the truth is, when you ask for transformation, demolition often comes first. You can't renovate a house without tearing down a few walls. You can't build a skyscraper without first digging up the ground. The loss you're experiencing might not be the enemy. Sometimes it's evidence that the foundation is being prepared for something far greater than what you had planned. Think about a seed. It must be buried. It must crack open. It must lose its original form before it can grow into something beautiful. But if you didn't understand the process, you'd think the seed was being destroyed. You'd say, it's broken. You'd look at the dirt covering it and say, it's over. But what looks like death is actually the beginning. What looks like loss is often the exact moment life begins to shift. You lost that relationship and it shattered you. You thought they were the one. You built your identity around their presence. And then, without warning, it ended. You were left with unanswered questions, sleepless nights, and a heart that didn't know how to beat on its own. But what if the loss wasn't rejection? What if it was redirection? What if their presence in your future would have delayed your destiny? What if their absence was necessary for your evolution? You didn't lose them. You lost a version of you that couldn't survive the next level. And that's hard to accept because pain feels so final. But sometimes, subtraction is the first sign of strategy. Sometimes heaven starts clearing out your circle, not because you're being punished, but because you're being positioned. And not everyone can sit in the front row of your transformation. Not everyone has the maturity to handle your next level. So yes, some of the answers you received came dressed as heartbreak. You got fired from the job you prayed for. You worked hard, showed up early, stayed late, and still terminated. At first, it felt like a failure. You questioned your worth. You doubted your skills. You assumed it was your fault. But what you didn't see was that the job was a lid on your potential. It was a comfort zone disguised as a career. You were too loyal to leave, so the door had to be closed for you. Because if it hadn't been taken, you never would have stepped into what was yours. You would have stayed stuck in survival, too afraid to step into significance. And the beauty of loss is that it makes room. It's like pruning a tree, not to hurt it, but to help it grow. You cut back the branches so more fruit can flourish. But in the moment, all the tree feels is the sting. And maybe that's you right now, stinging, confused, trying to make sense of why things fell apart. But what if you're not falling apart at all? What if you're falling into alignment? Have you ever tried to carry too many bags at once? You're juggling groceries, keys, your phone, trying to hold it all together. But the truth is, until you put something down, your hands will never be free to hold what's next. That's what loss does. It frees your grip. It empties your hands so you can receive what's been waiting for you. Some of you are grieving what left, not realizing it left so you could grow. You're still mourning the thing that was never meant to go the distance. You're still crying over the plan that was only ever supposed to be a stepping stone. And the longer you stay bitter about the broken place, the harder it becomes to see the blessing in the breakthrough. You have to reframe your perspective. It's not just a loss. It's a lesson. It's not the end. It's an exchange. Something lesser had to be removed to make space for something bigger. You didn't just lose friends. You gained discernment. You didn't just lose a job. You gained direction. You didn't just lose comfort. You gained capacity. But it doesn't feel like that when you're in the middle of the storm. It feels like chaos. It feels like confusion. It feels like everything is being taken. But sometimes in the middle of a storm, the roots of your identity get stronger. Just like gold must go through fire to be purified, your purpose must be tested by pressure. You can't become who you were born to be if you stay in who you've always been. And growth never feels like growth when it's happening. It feels like grief. But grief is often the gate to greatness. You had to say goodbye to what was so you could welcome what will be. So yes, some answers look like loss. They feel like failure. They carry the sting of disappointment and the weight of confusion. But buried beneath that pain is a promise. Hidden within, that heartbreak is a healing you never thought you'd find. And when you look back, you'll realize the loss was never meant to destroy you. It was designed to deliver you. Divine timing always trumps human planning. You thought it would happen by now. You had the timeline mapped out, the vision board set up, the 5-year plan written in ink. You did everything right. You prayed, you worked, you sacrificed, you stayed consistent, and still nothing. No doors opening, no emails returning, no opportunities unfolding. And you start asking yourself those silent questions, the ones that echo in the late night hours. Did I miss something? Did I fail? Did I wait too long? But here's the truth you've got to hold on to. Divine timing always trumps human planning. See, we've been trained to measure success by deadlines and due dates. By what culture says should happen by 25, or what your family expected by 30. You look at people around you, friends getting married, co-workers being promoted, influencers building empires before they can even rent a car legally. And you feel behind. But you've got to remember, the speed of your blessing does not determine the strength of it. Some of the most powerful trees in the world take the longest time to grow. But once they rise, they don't break with the wind. They don't collapse in storms because their roots were developed in patience. You can't microwave destiny. You can't rush significance. Divine timing doesn't operate on your urgency. It moves by alignment. It doesn't ask if you're tired of waiting. It waits until you are ready, not just to receive the blessing, but to sustain it. Because getting something prematurely is one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a person. A platform given too soon becomes a prison. A relationship entered too quickly becomes a burden. A promotion accepted too early becomes a source of anxiety instead of purpose. Think about a cake pulled out of the oven too early. It might look good on the outside, but inside it's raw, undercooked, unstable. That's what happens when we try to rush what's meant to be developed slowly. You might have the image, but you won't have the integrity to hold it. That's why divine timing is so powerful. It protects you from your own impatience. It guards your future from your temporary feelings. It says, not yet, not to hurt you, but to prepare you. You ever been stuck in traffic, frustrated, annoyed, questioning why the universe is slowing you down, and then you drive a few miles further and see a massive accident you just avoided? That delay wasn't random. It was divine. You didn't know what was ahead, but something greater did. And that's how divine timing works. It slows you down to save you from something you didn't see coming. It places you in uncomfortable pauses so that you don't arrive unprotected. Some of the most powerful seasons of your life will feel like nothing is happening. But those are the seasons where the foundation is being laid. When the world is quiet and the notifications stop and the applause fades, that's when character is built. That's when your roots grow deep. That's when your self-worth detaches from validation. And once you're rooted, you won't be shaken. Once you've matured, you won't be manipulated, because you'll know what's for you can't be rushed, and what's not for you won't be forced. Remember that friend who got the opportunity you prayed for, the one who seemed to get blessed without the struggle. You clapped for them on the outside, but inside you were breaking. Why not me? You whispered in the dark. But here's what you didn't see. They got it fast, but they weren't built for the wait. They climbed too quickly and collapsed quietly because their timing wasn't divine. It was desperate. It was orchestrated by hustle, not heaven. And hustle without wisdom is dangerous. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are being positioned. While others are building with cheap materials for quick applause, you are being carved like marble for longevity, not just visibility. The waiting is not a punishment, it's a setup. The silence is not a denial, it's preparation. Divine timing doesn't need your panic. It requires your trust. Because while you're calculating minutes, heaven is orchestrating moments. Moments that will change your life, moments that will unlock rooms nowhere a summit could get you into, moments that will bring relationships that don't drain you but develop you. Think of bamboo. It takes years to break the surface. It looks like nothing is happening. But under the soil, it's growing a complex, unshakable root system. And then one day, it shoots up feet overnight. That's what's happening in your life. You're in the root building phase. So when your time comes, and it will, you won't just rise fast, you'll rise strong. So stop measuring your life by someone else's milestones. Stop stressing because the clock is ticking. Divine timing doesn't bow to human pressure. It moves with purpose, precision, and protection. What's being prepared for you is bigger than you imagined, but it requires a version of you that is stable, grounded, and whole. That's what this delay is doing. It's making you ready, not just to step into the blessing, but to stay in it without losing yourself. The answer will be pressed down, shaken together, and running over. The answer will be pressed down, shaken together, and running over. That means when it finally comes, it won't come the way you expected. It'll come overflowing. Not just enough, but more than enough. Not just barely making it, but exceeding your wildest imagination. But here's the thing, to get to that kind of blessing, you've got to be ready for the press. Because before something can run over, it has to be shaken, it has to be compacted, and it has to go through pressure. Let me break it down for you in a way you'll feel deep in your spirit. Imagine you've got a container and you're trying to fill it with grain or flour. At first glance, it looks full, but then you press it down, you shake it, you let it settle, and suddenly you realize there's more space than you thought. That's what life does. That's what the process does. It presses you, it shakes you, not to hurt you, but to make room for more. You said you wanted abundance, but you didn't know it came with a breaking. You said you wanted overflow, but you didn't realize the path to overflow walks right through inconvenience, delay, rejection, and frustration. You thought it would be easy. You thought it would be instant. But no, what's coming to you is going to be pressed down. So it fits more than it looks like it should. It's going to be shaken together. So every empty space gets filled. And then, when there's absolutely no more room, it's going to run over. Think about that moment in your life when everything felt chaotic. When it felt like your world was shaking. People walking out. Plans falling through. Peace slipping away. And you were left wondering, what is going on? But what if that shaking was part of the blessing? What if it wasn't sabotage? It was set up. What if the things being shaken loose weren't meant to stay in the first place? See, when something is shaken, what's unstable rises to the top and gets removed. That's why in the kitchen, when you're baking, you sift the flour. You shake it to get the clumps out. That's not punishment. That's preparation. And some of us are asking for blessings with clumped up attitudes, unstable hearts, and confused priorities. So life comes in and starts shaking things, not to break you, but to purify you. You were wondering why that relationship ended so suddenly, why that job let you go without warning, why doors you thought were open started slamming in your face. That was the shake, that was the press. And yes, it hurt. Yes, it made you question yourself. But what if that was making space for what's running over now? I want you to imagine someone pouring juice into a glass, and the juice keeps flowing, spilling over the rim, running down the sides, soaking the table. That's the kind of answer that's coming your way. The kind that can't be contained. The kind that blesses not just you, but everyone connected to you. The kind of overflow that drips into the lives of your family, your friends, your purpose, your business, your future. But let's be real. It didn't look like that in the beginning. It looked like loss. It looked like loneliness. It looked like you were being left behind while everyone else was getting ahead. And in those moments, you wondered if your prayers were ignored. But now you know, they weren't ignored. They were incubating. Being prepared in a place you couldn't see, in ways you couldn't predict. And all the while, life was pressing, shaking, and making room. You ever filled a trash bag and then pressed it down to make more space? You thought it was full, but when you pushed down, suddenly you could fit more. That's your life right now. You thought you'd hit your capacity. You thought you were at your limit. But when pressure came, it didn't break you. It expanded you. You became wiser, stronger, more disciplined, more focused. That's what the press was for. Not to destroy you, but to enlarge your capacity to receive what's next. Because let's be honest, blessing can crush a person who isn't ready. Increase can become a curse if you don't have the structure to sustain it. So the press is protection. The shake is preparation. And the overflow, that's the promise. You thought you were being emptied, but you were being positioned. You thought you were being overlooked, but you were being overfilled. And here's the most powerful part. When something runs over, it doesn't stay confined to its container. It spills. It affects everything around it. That's the kind of answer that's coming to you. The kind that's too big to keep to yourself. The kind that inspires others. The kind that shifts atmospheres. The kind that creates legacy. But you've got to survive the press. You've got to remain faithful in the shake. You've got to trust the silence. Because what's being formed in the invisible will soon be undeniable. And when it comes, you'll know it's not just an answer. It's not just a response. It's pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Not just full, overflowing. They told you it was over. They looked at your struggle and counted you out. They saw your delays, your disappointments, your silent battles, and they assumed you had missed your moment. But what they didn't know was that pressure doesn't break purpose. Silence doesn't stop destiny. Delay is not denial. And when the time is right, when the hour strikes and the heavens move, no force on earth can stop what's about to be released in your life. Let them talk. Let them doubt. Let them scroll past your vision like it's just another dream on the timeline. Because when your moment arrives, it won't need a microphone. It'll speak for itself. Your breakthrough won't need validation. It'll be visible. It'll shake the ground where you stand. Because when the answer comes, it will be bigger than you imagined, greater than they expected, and louder than your silence ever was. You've been through fire, but you didn't burn. You've walked through storms, but you didn't drown. You've cried in places nobody saw, prayed prayers nobody heard, and endured battles nobody clapped for. And yet you kept moving. You kept going. You kept believing. That alone is power. That's the stuff of warriors. That's what legacy is made of. Because survival in the silence is the greatest sign that elevation is near. They said, "You don't look like what you've been through." And you smiled. Because they didn't see the nights you held yourself together with whispers of faith. They didn't see the days you smiled while silently screaming on the inside. They didn't see how many times you wanted to quit, but you didn't. And now, the tables are turning. The shift is happening. And the thing you've been waiting for is about to come running over in ways you never dared to expect. You were never disqualified. You were being refined. You were never delayed. You were being developed. You weren't being punished. You were being prepared. The closed doors, they weren't rejections. They were divine redirections. The betrayals, they weren't setbacks. They were filters that removed what couldn't go with you to the next level. You thought you were being buried, but now you see, you were being planted. So now rise. Stand like the storm was your teacher and the silence was your training ground. Walk with a different kind of authority. Move like something greater is backing you, because it is. And when that answer shows up, when that opportunity finally knocks, don't be surprised. Be ready. You weren't waiting for nothing. You were being positioned for something so much greater than what you lost. The pain didn't come to stay. It came to elevate. The wait wasn't to waste time. It was to build capacity. Because when it arrives, you won't just receive it. You'll sustain it. You won't just touch it. You'll own it. You won't just see the blessing. You'll become the blessing. And let this be the anthem of your soul. The comeback is always stronger than the setback. Rock bottom became the foundation on which I rebuilt my life. I'm not lucky. I'm prepared. They tried to bury me, but they didn't know I was a seed. Because every no built your discipline. Every delay grew your discernment. Every lonely season taught you how to lead yourself. And now you carry something different. You don't just have dreams. You have depth. You don't just have goals. You have grit. You don't just have a vision. You have the volume of perseverance echoing behind every step you take. So when the answer arrives, don't just celebrate the moment. Honor the journey. Don't just praise the breakthrough. Remember the breaking. Don't just take the blessing. Become the vessel that multiplies it for others. The overflow wasn't just meant to bless your life. It's meant to heal others through you. Your story is a survival manual for someone else. Your voice is the lifeline for a person still drowning in what you've already conquered. So wear your scars like medals. Speak your truth like prophecy. And walk into this next chapter like the answer you've been waiting for is already within you.